For 100 years, the galaxy had believed humanity was tamed. After the final accord ended the Great Expansion Wars, humans withdrew to their sector, built walls of silence around their systems, and spoke no words to the greater galactic community. The other races took this as surrender. They believed the fire of Earth had burned out. They believed humanity had accepted peace. They were wrong. At the edge of the Orion Arm, the Galactic Union's fleets drifted in ceremonial formation. The anniversary of the accord was a time for celebration, a symbol of peace that had lasted a century. Delegates spoke of progress, of unity, of the end of war. Yet beneath the glittering lights of the grand station that orbited the neutral star, tension was thick as dust. Reports had begun to surface. Silent colonies, disrupted signals, border patrols that never returned. But none dared to blame humanity. They were too afraid to disturb the illusion. In the Hall of Banners, the council gathered. 1,000 species filled the chamber. Each delegate shimmered in their own way, scaled, feathered, translucent, or metallic, but all shared one feature: complacency. At the center stood a single human representative, draped in the dark gray uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. The face was calm, eyes steady, voice measured as always. Humans had learned to wear peace like armor. Every gesture was deliberate, every word calculated. It was their greatest disguise. When the council's supreme speaker took the floor, a hush fell. The speaker's voice was soft, melodic, yet trembling. We gather here to commemorate the century of peace that ended humanity's wars of expansion. May this union endure another 100 years. Applause followed, a chorus of mechanical limbs and biological appendages striking surfaces in hollow celebration. Yet the human did not move. The eyes remained still, fixed not on the speaker but on the far side of the chamber where the star maps floated. Small red markers pulsed at the edges of human space. Unnoticed by most, they blinked like quiet warnings. Later that night, as the festivities echoed across the halls, the human envoy stood alone before the transparent walls of the observation deck. Beyond the glass stretched the deep dark, the quiet that had once hidden entire fleets. The envoy reached up and pressed a hand to the glass. It was a gesture the species often used when staring into the void. A sign of remembrance, or perhaps of preparation. Across the room, another diplomat approached. The being's form shimmered, soft and glowing. "You do not celebrate," it said. "Does peace not please your kind?" The human's lips curved slightly. "Peace is a lovely illusion," the envoy said. "But illusions don't last." Before the other could answer, an alarm sounded. A deep crimson light filled the hall. Across the galaxy, communication channels flared to life with signals of distress. Within moments, the council's great screen filled with images of destruction. Border stations gone silent. Trade routes consumed by static, and then silence replaced by motion. Thousands of vessels emerged from behind the veil of human space. Metallic giants, cold and unmarked, their hulls black as the void. They moved in perfect formation, silent, disciplined, unstoppable. Humanity had returned. The council chamber descended into chaos. Commands shouted. Orders overlapping. Fleets mobilized in panic. Yet deep within the chaos, the human envoy simply watched. No expression, no fear. Just quiet acknowledgement. The envoy turned away and whispered, "We warned you." For a century, humanity had studied peace. They had learned its rhythms, its weaknesses, its blindness. They had watched as the other species grew complacent, soft, trusting in treaties and symbols. They had smiled and nodded and waited. While others disarmed, humanity built. While others debated, humanity trained. Their fleets vanished into deep systems beyond mapped stars. Their soldiers became shadows. Their machines learned to think, to build, to prepare. Humanity had not forgotten war. They had refined it. Within hours, the first galactic defense lines collapsed. The Union's fleets, vast in number, magnificent in design, fell apart under precision strikes. No one had seen human ships move like this before. They were not lumbering vessels of old, but coordinated phantoms that danced through space with impossible unity. Every missile, every beam, every maneuver executed with cold precision. The galaxy's admirals watched in disbelief as their command screens filled with static. Their fleets weren't fighting an enemy, they were being erased. On the neutral station, panic consumed the council. Evacuation protocols engaged. Dignitaries fled through corridors of chaos. The human envoy moved with calm purpose toward the docking bay. As the doors slid open, Rows of armored soldiers stood waiting. Their armor bore no insignia, no flag, only the deep gray of neutrality, a color long associated with peace. Yet their presence told another story. The envoy walked past them, speaking softly. The illusion has served its purpose. Now the truth will shape what comes next. Across the void, the first planetary targets fell. Human forces did not bombard cities. They struck control centers, communication hubs, and orbital defense grids with surgical precision. They did not seek annihilation. They sought control. Every strike pattern was calculated to disrupt, not destroy. Every captured system was restored to operation within hours, but under new rule. The galaxy soon realized this was not a war of conquest, it was reclamation. Humanity was reclaiming its position, not as a power among equals, but as the hand that would shape the future. Within days, the Union's command collapsed. Delegates pleaded for negotiation. Messages were sent to Earth, pleas for mercy. None were answered. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any bombardment. The galaxy began to remember the old stories. Stories of a species that had risen from ashes time and again, that had fought extinction on its own world and survived, that had looked into the abyss and learned to walk through it. In the weeks that followed, the illusion of peace disintegrated. Systems surrendered without resistance. Those who fought found themselves facing an enemy that anticipated every move. Human forces seemed to know the enemy's plans before they were executed. No one understood how until the truth emerged. The networks, communication systems, and defense protocols that the Union had relied on for a century had all been built on human technology. The peace accords had given humanity access to everything. They had been watching all along. On the captured capital world of the Union, the great hall of governance now lay in ruins, the banners of peace torn down. In their place hung a single symbol, the outline of Earth, not as a conqueror's mark but as a reminder. Humanity had never truly joined the Union. They had studied it. They had waited for the day it would forget who had forged the peace in the first place. As the new order spread, resistance cells began to rise. Across occupied systems, some believed they could ignite rebellion. They were met not with rage but with words. Human envoys appeared, not as destroyers but as teachers. They spoke of discipline, unity, and strength through struggle. They offered rebuilding, technology, and protection. And the strangest thing happened: the conquered began to listen. Where the Union had ruled through bureaucracy, humanity ruled through purpose. They rebuilt the broken, fed the hungry, healed the wounded, but none mistook it for kindness. Every act of aid carried a single message: strength is peace. In orbit around the former Union capital, a massive command vessel hovered, a city of steel and silence. Inside, the human commander stood before a display of the galaxy. Red markers turned to gray one by one, signaling pacified systems. Status, the commander said quietly. The officer beside them answered, 70% compliance across the outer sectors. Resistance minimal. Reconstruction underway, the commander nodded. And the core worlds? The officer hesitated. Still resisting? They believe peace can be restored. The commander turned, gaze cold and certain. Peace is not restored. It is enforced. From that moment on, humanity's true nature was no longer a mystery. They were not conquerors driven by greed. They were not tyrants seeking dominance. They were survivors, builders, warriors shaped by endless conflict and tempered by the illusion of peace. When others sought comfort, humanity sought readiness. When others believed the age of war had ended, humanity prepared for its return. Years passed. The new order stabilized. Trade resumed, but under strict regulation. Armies once belonging to 100 species now marched together under human command. The galaxy did not crumble, it adapted. For the first time in living memory, piracy vanished. Border skirmishes ceased. Production increased. Yet beneath this stability, fear endured. Not of violence, but of awakening. Every being who looked upon the human flag understood that peace was no longer a dream. It was a discipline. In the rebuilt council chamber, now under human oversight, representatives once again gathered. The walls gleamed with new steel, the symbols of unity freshly engraved. At the center, a human stood before them. Not as envoy, but as arbiter. The voice was steady, emotionless. A century ago, you believed peace was the absence of war. You believed treaties could tame nature. You were wrong. Peace is the product of vigilance, of strength, of will. It cannot exist without those who are willing to defend it. No one argued. No one dared. When the assembly ended, the human walked alone through the silent halls. Outside, ships moved in perfect formation, gliding between stars like silent sentinels. The illusion had been replaced by something far greater,